Some people think that this next lecture might be one of the more challenging as far as the concepts that it brings about, so I hope you'll bear with me while I talk to you about a composer named Kurt Weill, who lived from 1900, very evenly in the first half of the 20th century, from 1900 to 1950. And Weill was born in Dessau, Germany in 1900, and here we go again. As a child, he received musical instruction from his parents, and was sort of a young protege. He, while still a student, earned his living playing popular tunes in a German beer hall, and became very fascinated with the notion of the popular song and how it was sort of a tool for communication that people used across cultures. While still a student, he became, well, let me put it this way. In Germany in the 1920s, there emerged a school of thinking which we call Zeitkunst. Beware, there's a lot of long German words in this. I may drop a couple of them into a separate message with this module so that you don't have to worry about reading this and spelling them. But Zeitkunst is what we refer to as contemporary art. Now, contemporary art, if you're an art major, an art historian out there, something like that, it doesn't mean the art that's happening right now. It means art that is happening with a purpose, that it is happening in response to the world around it, and that it is happening to deliver a message rather than just to represent or entertain. Some people feel that the function of art in general is to take us away from our troubles. Some feel that the function of art is to represent something and show it to us, or show it to other people who maybe haven't seen it. The folks who work in the fields of contemporary art, at least in the 20s, and with the folk we're concerned with, were talking about how art could be used to teach a lesson, to deliver a moral message, to bring information to people in an easy-to-remember fashion, mnemonics, that sort of thing. Now, composers of music who marched under this banner were part of a group of people who wrote for something we call Gebrauchsmusik, which is really a fancy way of saying functional music. The Germans have a nice habit of making really long words by taking some other words and kind of put them together into one word. And Gebrauchsmusik is one of those. It means assimilating popular songs and popular techniques and adapting the music for popular media to get a message across. Now that can be noble, like having a moral message that we're putting through, but that also counts for advertising. It counts for education. It can be used in some cases for politics. It's the idea that there's a message and that the song kind of helps us remember the ABCs set to Mozart's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's how we learn. And part of it is the idea that the music helps drive the point home. Weill had always been interested in music, and he was a devotee of the stage, and he soon came to become associated with operas that were this Zeitkunst kind of, that worked under this banner. Eventually, he would become involved with a director, a man named Bertolt Brecht. I'm hoping that that's readable from here. But Bert Brecht, probably one of the most influential directors of the 20th century, and also a writer, wound up writing lyrics for Kurt Weill. And together, they and some other folks put together something that they called the Epic Theater. Now, the Epic Theater doesn't mean that it was like big and epic, like that kind of thing. And more like Homer's epics were designed to tell stories that would then relate information to the people, and they felt that they were doing the same thing. And there are some concepts with the Epic Theater that are a little bit unusual compared to the theater that many of us are used to. And it might also touch on some things that we don't always think about. First of all, in the Epic Theater, the theater itself is ephemeral. By that I mean it is very temporary. It is very, it's only there for that moment. The show, the performance, on June 6th of 2012, that will never again be replicated, and that, according to them, was an individual piece of art. And that piece of art consisted not only of the play being performed on the stage, but of whoever happened to be the audience at that time. Because the audience is part of the overall experience in the Epic Theater. There's this idea that they address the audience directly. You see that as my second point here, that there's a complete disregard for what we call the fourth wall. Realists like Ibsen and those guys, they tended to believe that there was like a wall, an invisible wall, and that you as the audience are watching things happen, the characters don't know you're there. In a Brecht and Weil piece, the characters could talk right to you. And they could also stop the action and kind of expect the audience to be sort of a jury. They want you to talk back, they want you to heckle them or whatever. What do you, the audience, think about what this character did or didn't do? To that end, the theater for them is a moral lesson. And the idea that the theater is used to teach us something and to have us come away with something that would improve society in some way. The audience, according to them, they believed in something they called the theater of alienation. And by that they meant that the audience should be completely impartial. If there's a character on stage and they feel that the audience is sympathizing too much with that particular character, in their eyes a playwright is obligated to immediately bring something else out that will distract them or make them think about things from the other side as well. They want a balanced jury. So if a little girl carrying a puppy dog, well, we better bring out a big dancing number to distract you so that you don't all pay attention to that one character. The audience being impartial leads me to something else that's kind of strange in a Brecht and Weil piece. They kind of believe that entertainment value was secondary to getting the message across. These are guys that they say, well, if you were entertained and you liked the show, that's nice, but did it teach you something? That's important. Did it carry a political message? That's great. A lot of Brecht and Weil's songs, even in their various scores, have titles like Love Song, Wedding Song, the song where we learn about a main character. You know, very disposable titles that are designed to kind of, make you forget that you're dealing with a specific musical. Because they didn't really envision their stuff. It's kind of ironic that we're sitting here studying it, because they didn't want that. They kind of thought, well, this stuff only relates to the people of this time period and what was going on in their lives, and it should be changed and adapted and restructured to fit the lives of the people who are in the audience that are watching it now. Now, Brecht and Weil had a very, very specific political agenda, and although they very frequently would have you believe that they want impartiality, there's also a lot to lead you in certain directions. There's a lot of socialism in Weil. There is a lot in the epic theater of the notion that big business is behind a lot of the evils in the world and that the people should rise up. You'll see a lot of characters that go on strike. You'll see a lot of characters that protest the allocation of natural and basic resources and the fight over basic resources between the very, very wealthy and the average person that should have access to water or things like that basically people need. There's a lot of the examination in their shows of if a character turns to crime, are they really a criminal, or are they a product of an environment that forced them to become a criminal because they had no other means to survive? A lot of their pieces kind of have Weil, because he was a very gifted songwriter, will have a couple of really strong ballads, particularly written for sopranos, that kind of cut through like a beam of sunlight and kind of are supposed to remind you of some pure and good side. A lot of the characters in their shows are sort of caricatures in the sense that they are solid evil or they're solid good. And many times the solid evil characters are authority figures of some kind. They own the factory, or they paid off the police force, or that sort of thing. There's also a lot in Brecht and Weil of that notion that one character can lead the masses to make a difference, and you see that very often, this sort of this idolization of individual characters. Brecht and Weil did not believe that we needed to have very specifically representative sets. They felt that if we said, picture the grandest palace you could ever picture, that it was very limiting for us as set designers if we tried to build that. But instead, there should be like a sign that said, the grandest palace you've ever seen, quite literally. And all of us would picture our own favorites, and we would all say, well, it couldn't get any better than the one that I've imagined. You may be familiar with a number of pieces in the 21st century that sort of parody and do takeoffs on Brecht and Weil, in particular the musical Urinetown, which is entirely written as a tribute to the musical style of Kurt Weill. Many of the melodies in Urinetown actually sound a great deal like the melodies from other shows. And many of the characters, including their dress and their style and their look, really reflect a style that comes with these pieces. These pieces also have a great deal that they owe to the German cabaret scene and to German small house operettas. These characters usually have light shining very harshly on them. You get a lot of pale, a lot of characters where the holes in their fishnets and the tears in their costumes are very visible because they're designed to show us the dark underside of society. Now, why are we talking about Kurt Weill if he was born in Germany? Well, that might not completely surprise you, but it has to do with the burning of the Reichstag in Germany in the 1930s. Hitler was responsible for horrible, horrible things, and one of the things that had to do a lot with the rise of the Nazi Party was the notion of setting fires and causing disasters and then being the ones to come along and fix them. And Weill saw the rise of the Nazi Party and did not want to be a part of that and emigrated first to France and then ultimately to the United States. In coming to the United States, he spoke almost no English and had this huge career as this really, really successful writer. And luckily for him, fell in with some other very successful people who were fans of his work, particularly a man named Mark Blitzstein. Blitzstein wrote English lyrics for a number of classic Kurt Weill musicals, particularly for his major musical, The Threepenny Opera. I'll be talking in our second unit a little bit more specifically about Threepenny Opera. That'll be the second half of today. And again, you'll see some attachments to some of Weill's work with this module as well.